Hello random viewers and welcome to another random video. This is going to start a series, I guess. I'm going to be trying to make some medieval armor, so this is going to be pretty fun. It'll be with actual metal, and I've already made a suit of chainmail. I can do a video on making chainmail maybe later. I don't know if I want to do that. There's plenty of those on the internet, at least as far as I've seen. And I did learn a lot of this on YouTube, so I'll be linking a channel in the description. Can't remember his name, but he has videos that show all kinds of things that are very useful and helped me learn to do this. We're going to start with building a helmet, because that's one of the first things you're going to want. Other armor isn't very good if you're dead with your head being bashed in or something, so that's not fun. We'll try to avoid that, so helmets, that's the first step, after chainmail. First, what you're going to need is to make helm halves. These are, I'll have something here on the screen, but these are like a half piece of the helmet, and from there you're going to be building a lot more. So to start that, you need a template. So that's what your template looks like. It's kind of, it looks like it's the same on both sides, but it's actually not. I'll hold up a ruler to it so you guys can see what it looks like. Mine is about 11.5 inches this way, and then maybe 7 inches this way, a little less. But it's not perfectly symmetrical. If you look at this, you can see that if I put that on the center or close enough, you get the idea. The curve is a lot more gradual on the bottom than on the top. And the way you do that is, what you're going to need is a protractor thing. I think that's a protractor, or is it a compass? I can't remember. One of these things that you can, do this and draw circles by putting it in the middle and flipping it around. Yeah, one of those. You're going to need scissors, because scissors are good. I love those scissors. Those are cobalt scissors. Highly recommend those. Sharpie or writing utensil. And then some cardboard. I'm not going to show making the template. I mean, you just open this thing up to quite a degree and then kind of try and trace it. And what you're going to want to do is those measurements I showed you. You want 11.5 inches this way, and up from there you're going to need like 3 or something like that, 3 or 4. And you're going to have to figure that out, because I didn't really know what I was doing. I just threw it together and it just so happened to work, so I couldn't really, I don't know if I could repeat it. I have a good stencil now. You can see my measurements. You can try and make one yourself. You just plant the needle end in something, and then you do this, you draw it in Sharpie, cut it out with scissors, and then you've got one of these. That's about it. Anyways, cardboard box, stencil, that we got that. You're also going to need a dishing stump. A dishing stump is very fun to make. It takes a few hours. It's a piece of wood like this, and it's got a bowl shape in it. So as you can see, it's rounded out. Mine is actually pretty terrible. It has a lot of holes. It's nowhere near perfect. But anyways, the guy in the description, he has a tutorial for making this. You use a drill and then you chisel it out, and it takes forever, but once you have it, it's pretty good. I do need to put a metal strip around here to keep it from splitting. I should probably do that before I hammer out the helm half. I've already done one, so I'll know what I'm doing somewhat. I'm making this up as I go along, kind of, so we're going to see how it turns out in real time, but I'll be telling you what I'm doing as I'm doing it so that you could replicate it if you wanted to. But yeah, there's a dishing stump. That's an important tool to have if you want a rounded helmet like mine. That reminds me of one of the material. You need a bend vise. Bend vices are incredibly important. If you close them shut, they're an anvil, and that's very useful for all kinds of things. I'm holding a phone and a Sharpie, so I apologize for the slowness. Anyways, you've got an anvil. You can also clamp your trailer hitch in there for planishing. We'll get to that, and that's all very important. As for other materials that you're going to need pliers. Well, you don't necessarily need pliers. Pliers are just useful. I like to have 2 sets because you can hold stuff in both hands. I haven't really had a need for them yet, but always good to have around. You need a file to remove sharp edges. This one's pretty fine, which is good. If you've got a big one that's like this, you're going to have some trouble because it's just not fine enough. And it kind of hurts to hold those. You're going to need aviation shears, right-handed and left-handed. Varieties that you can cut in different directions. You can get a pack of like 3 of them. One like this, and one that's kind of straight like this. You don't actually need this one. for like $20, which is pretty good. You're going to need gloves. Gloves are important. You can get those pretty cheap at Tractor Supply. You're going to need roofing nails. These make rivets, so those are important. You're going to need a trailer hitch or other round object that's made of metal and is pretty solid, so we'll put that there. You're going to need a chisel like this. This one is blunted and rounded ever so slightly at the tip there, you can kind of see. And this, you can clamp it in a bench vise, like this, and then you can bend metal on top of it, or you can hammer it into a block of wood, kind of like this, and do folding of the metal. We'll get into all that later on in the series. We won't be doing a whole lot of that for a little while, but that's good stuff to have. Oh, we'll bring this over here. This block of wood just has notches in it. You can probably get a 2x4 and put some notches in it with the chisel before you blunt it out. Let's see. This is probably, next to the dishing stump, the most important thing, a ball-peen hammer. You're going to use both sides of it. People say you need an automotive hammer for planishing. I'll explain what planishing is later. I don't know, I just use the flat end of this thing, and the rounded end I use for the actual rough hammering, and so far the only hammer I've needed. It's not very professional, don't care, it gets the job done. And then the last thing you're going to need is metal. So on top of this stack of boxes I have a large sheet of 22 gauge, not sponsored by Walmart, sorry, 22 gauge steel. This is the welded variety. 22 gauge isn't the best for protection, it's pretty thin, wobbly, but if you fold the metal and really make the helmet well, it's still going to be pretty strong and will deflect a majority of things. Take your stencil that you made and you're going to try and put it on there, like that, or somewhere where it fits well. You want to be putting it into a spot like this, kind of where you're conserving that metal, because you don't want to be spending a ton of money, or somewhere like that. You know, you just want to be putting it along corners so that you're minimizing waste, because waste is expensive and you don't want to deal with that. And then you just trace it with a Sharpie. I'm now going to trace out this thing. You should probably wear gloves when you're handling the metal. However, you know, it's hard to get a Sharpie lined up when you've got your hands a lot bigger than usual, so I'm not gonna do it. Don't sue me, please, because I definitely can't afford it. Let's see. So basically you just draw the Sharpie on it. I don't know how to really explain it any better. If you can't trace stuff, then this is probably too difficult a project for you already. As you can see, my tracing is not perfect. That's okay, I'm going to cut slightly inside of it, and then it should come out pretty well. Now I get to have fun cutting out this piece of metal. That's always great. So definitely wear gloves for cutting out metal, because you do not want to get cut by this stuff. Metal splinters are even more wonderful than wood splinters. If you've ever had a wood splinter, you know how great those are, so yeah, we're going to avoid that. This is where you need both the right hand and left hand shears. Now have it roughly cut out. It's definitely not great in spots, so we'll flip it over to where we can see the ink from the Sharpie. What we're going to do is we're just going to go around and try and clean it up in spots where it's a little bit not so nice, kind of like in there. Keep in mind though, you want it to be usable, so relatively nice, but it does not need to be perfect. You're going to be cutting off a large portion of this surface anyways, because when you go and bang it out in that dishing stump, it's not going to be very perfect when you're done. So you're going to be forced to remove a lot as it is around the edges. So don't even bother filing this thing. I mean, sure, it's a death trap. Well, not death trap, but sure, it's a safety hazard to have it jagged the way that it is, but yeah, don't worry about filing it quite yet. You can do all that stuff later. Do clean up these little corners if you can, though. You want those to be somewhat decent. And honestly, if it doesn't look that great, well, that's fine. It just needs to be basically like that, and then you hammer it out in the dishing stump. That's fun, and we'll get to that here in a second. now I have my stump set up. I put a metal band on it, so it should be pretty safe now. It's been a day, that's why my clothes have changed. So now we've got our piece. We want to hammer it out into a piece that looks like this. This was the first one I made. We're going to be trying to make this from this thing. It's a very time-consuming process. Yeah, that first one took me probably 4 hours of total work, just for half of the top of the helmet. Yeah, it's going to be a process, but if I get right here, what we're going to want to do is first start by hammering around the edges, and then we'll slowly work our way inwards, and then once we've got it roughly kind of banged out, we'll then go in and do more fine details, and then eventually we'll do the planishing, which gets it completely done. The thing to do is I'm over here, you can see where my arms are coming from, so I'm over this way. I'm going to be hammering it kind of close to me, so I'm going to be hammering here or here, so slightly to the right or left, but towards me, slightly. You're not supposed to do that with knives, but here doesn't really matter. And what I'm going to do is basically find a good spot, maybe about here, and give it a good whack. Oh, right, I forgot gloves. I am wearing safety glasses, though. Do recommend safety glasses for this. Yeah, don't forget your gloves. And you'd think that you'd have more control if you did not wear gloves on the hand holding the hammer, but you actually do want to. It prevents blisters. You're going to want to use the rounded edge of the hammer, not the flat one, but the rounded one, and you want to hold it somewhat close to where you're hammering. Not super close, because then you can hit your thumb, and that would not be fun. You don't want to hold it way over here, because that's bad. You want to hold it about here, and be hammering here. So we're going to continue doing that. We're going to just do another big whack like that, then another one there. We're kind of hammering into the wood. And you're seeing we're getting these dent things here. Don't worry about that too much. Move our hand. And you can see it's kind of rounded. These dents, they will go away. We'll have to get rid of them. In fact, to get rid of them, you'll just kind of push it down to the stump, just gently kind of tap on them a little bit. Well, none of this is gentle. You're hitting pretty hard with each one of these blows, but it's a lot more gentle in comparison. But don't worry about doing this too perfectly, because we'll come back again later. But you want to hit it up against the wood, so. And that just keeps it. So now that's a little bit better. We'll get right here. But then we'll go back to the rough forming. We want to kind of come in a little bit further, so we're going to... There we go, that's a little bit better. So there's that corner kind of done. Not done, but, you know, started. Then we'll come back around here, and we'll continue going. So that's a bit of a gem. I don't want that. That would be very hard to get rid of later, so we want to get rid of those bigger dents. You just need to keep in mind what you can and cannot get rid of later. If it folds over itself, well, you're done. You don't want that to happen, so you want to make sure it doesn't fold over itself. You want to just kind of keep it up against this stump, and you're using it to kind of form what you're doing. And then these bits. They're kind of bending inwards a bit. We don't want them to fold over, so. Just worry about that edge. You don't need to worry about it further in. You keep it under control at the edge, and it'll stay mostly under control elsewhere. There, that's a little bit better. That's not going to fold over itself. And then we'll just continue. You're not really supposed to use this side of the hammer much, but it kind of helps with these little edges getting out of control. Because you definitely don't want that. It would ruin the whole piece. If you notice, I'm kind of turning the piece of wood and I'm not really moving the hammer a whole lot, and that's kind of how you want to do it. because you're going to find a good spot on the log, and you're going to want to be doing most of your hammering there. If it starts bending inwards a lot, you can kind of grab it and just push it outwards like that, and that'll just keep it all under control. As you can see, I'm kind of getting that shape, but I've got a bit of a dent here, so I want to get rid of that. So we're going to start kind of flattening that out. So as you can see, that shape's getting even better now. It's starting to become rounded in this direction. It's also rounded in this direction, which is pretty good, but we want it bowed out a little bit more in the middle, especially along these sides here. So that's where we're going to focus our effort. You're just going to focus it wherever it is. You want that semicircle shape. If you haven't been able to guess already, you can tell that this is quite loud. I would recommend some kind of hearing protection. I'm just wearing the headphones that I wear when I'm recording videos, or use my computer at all because I don't have speakers. But yeah, they're closed backed and it's enough to keep it from damaging your hearing, so I would recommend some kind of hearing protection. And then once you've got it to where you're about happy with it, that's actually pretty good right there. You're not going to get it much better in the Stump. Planishing gets it to as nice as the other thing. Go around the edge one more time. Let's try and get that edge smoothed out. Light taps for this, well, again, relatively light in comparison to what you've been doing for the past hour, possibly. It'll probably be a lot longer for you. My second time went a lot faster than my first, so that's a good sign. You learn a lot from your first try. And then, there we go. That's pretty good for now. If it doesn't quite line up perfectly, what you can do is, again, just as you're bending it, push it one way or another, and then hold it up with one eye and make sure it all lines up. And there you go. That's pretty decent. You've now taken a flat piece of metal and made it into a rounded one. I'm not going to do a super long video on planishing, but basically what you want to do is take your trailer hitch and put it in this bench vise. You're going to want to start sideways, and then later you'll want to put it right side up, and then at the very end you're going to want to tilt it just to make sure that you can get the helmet on a flat bit of the trailer hitch. Not flat, sorry, but rounded. You don't want it to be on this flat bit. That's not going to work too well. You want these rounded parts here. And the smoother and more polished it is, the better. So you're going to want to spot kind of, I don't know, it's all pretty bad on this trailer hitch. Which is, hey, I didn't have to pay for it, so that's great. But right in here is pretty good. It's more polished. So you'll want to use a spot like that. And I'm going to get this set up, but we're going to be using the ball peen hammer again. I'm using it for everything. The goal of planishing is to take something that looks like this. It's dented and kind of rough. And to make it something more like this that's a lot smoother and nicer. So to do that, we're going to put the nice one away. And you're going to want your gloves for this, because you'll get metal residue all over you, and it's just better, and like I said before, it kind of protects from blisters. What you're going to want to do is beat on this metal with the flat end of the ball peen hammer, and you're going to want to hit it against the trailer hitch, so it sounds kind of like this. You can hear that sound. This sound is when you're actually hitting the trailer hitch, and you've got it lined up right. If you hear a more hollow sound like this, it means you're not hitting correctly, and it's not going to go as well if you hear that a lot. Anyways, I'd like to start with the edges and work my way around. The edges have kind of rounded inwards some, and planishing will remove that. We just have to get there. And these are very gentle taps, and it's just a lot of these. In fact, you can get it going pretty fast. The basic idea is just to stay in one spot with the hammer and move the metal through it, same as it was with the Stump. And over time, it'll get a little bit smoother in a tiny area, and you just keep on going from there. I'm not going to film the whole thing because it's boring and you don't see a whole lot happening like you did in the other video, but that's the basic idea. You want to make sure you hear that nice ring and not the hollow sound of you missing. And once I've done that, I'll come back. we now have both pieces, but the trouble is that they don't really mesh up. And part of the reason for that is that that is not a 45-degree angle, neither is that. So we're going to have to trim these down some, a little bit on each side, so a little here, and hopefully that'll get them to line up. This one is also kind of stretched. This one's a lot more rounded nicely. But as you can see, this one, it's just a bit stretched towards the edges, so I'm going to have to try and bring that in. One of the ways I could do that is kind of banging it downwards here, or going back to the stump. All that could work. You're going to have to try and figure that out, how to fix that, because I'm not exactly sure what I'll do. I'll try a multitude of things, and then I'll cut along here. I'm not exactly sure how I'll do that, but yeah. I think one of the things I'll do is kind of get this kind of lined up to close to a 45-degree angle, and then go around it with like a Sharpie on a surface that's an even distance up and make a nice straight line. That should help some. Alright, I'll be back after I do those things. We now have both sections trimmed down. So both of these sections are trimmed so that they'll sit flat on any side. I just kind of went around it with a Sharpie here, kind of like this. And then when I needed to do it at a 45-degree angle, I put it up against this box with the angle I had just cut straight, like that, and then would just go around it with like an object to lift it up. If that makes any sense to you, then great, you can copy it. Now what I'm doing is I'm just doing little tiny adjustments with the hammer, or even just bending by hand to get these to line up perfectly. So I'm going to keep working on that. After quite a few adjustments, we've got it to where it lines up pretty well. It's definitely not perfect, but it really doesn't look that bad. The next step is to put a strip of metal all along here and rivet that down. Then from there we can shape it a little bit more to make it a little more circular, but then the two pieces will be together. I definitely want to bring this section here out a little bit because it looks a little dented inwards, but yeah, that's pretty good for now. I'm going to call it here for the day, but yeah, next episode what we'll do is we'll put that band down there, drill holes, put rivets, and then we'll look at bringing some stuff down from here, like a visor and other stuff like that. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this. Please do like, comment, and subscribe, and I hope you all have a very nice day.